At Cracking the Cash Flow Code. And my guest today is Tipton Shankwaller. And Tipton is an expert at franchising. One of the things I see with blue collar business a lot is that these folks try to figure out how to do it from scratch, and a franchise might be a solution that will be worthwhile for you. So instead of listening to me yammer on about it, let's bring the expert on. Hey, Tipton, how are you today?
I'm great. Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for joining us. So this is my big question. I have a construction company. Maybe I'm a drywall installer, or I'll have a cleaning company, or even a vending company for that matter, which I had. Why would I want to take my business that I'm doing from scratch and move it over to being inside a franchise? And then the second part of that is if I'm thinking about leaving my job as a carpenter or a plumber or an electrician, would it make sense for me to do a franchise out of the box or start my own business? So you get to choose which one you want to start with.
Sure. Well, you raised two great questions there, and two that I'm certainly familiar with. And so, when a company is looking at growing their business, they could go one of two routes, right? They could either A, develop their business on an ongoing basis through using their own capital, through using their own human capital, and expand with additional locations. Or they could choose to scale through franchising. And franchising becomes a great vehicle to be able to build and grow your business on an ongoing basis, but through using the investment of others. So, in the case of franchising, investors would be potential franchisees buying the brand, buying that proven model that they could go ahead and operate in a local marketplace out there. And so the benefit to the franchisor is, again, that's an investor putting up money, not the franchisor or corporation expanding with corporate money, and then
Can
also the
can
human
can can I
capital
just stop?
aspect.
Can I just stop you for a second? Can you explain what you mean by the investor putting up money? I'm going to start my construction company, and I go out
Yep.
with a truck and a hammer and stuff. And what other investment has a franchisor, the person who I'm buying a franchise from? What kind of investment have they made?
Well, on the investment side, again, my point there was, if a company, that plumbing company that you're referencing, is looking to grow, they could either grow by putting up their own money to grow, or the investor money in this case, if they were in fact a franchise business model, would be the franchisee buying the franchise license, investing in that business so that that person could have a business to build, grow, and develop using that company's proven system. So the investment would be coming from the franchisee, not the company itself.
So in other words, what you're saying is if I become a franchisee, I'm essentially buying a business in a box.
That is correct. I mean, in franchising, you hear the words proven system, turnkey system, business in a box, and they're all out there. But yes, essentially that is what it is. Because when you buy a franchise, you're buying the proven model, the systems, the operations, the branding, and the trial that's already taken place to make that business successful.
Cool. So I already have a successful business, and you come to me and say, I want you to be one of my franchisors or franchisees. Excuse me. Why would I want to do that?
If you already have a successful business and you're doing well in your business, you can look to use franchising as an exit strategy. In fact, it happens quite a bit within this organization because one of our brands is a business brokerage brand called Transworld Business Advisors. And oftentimes they get listings of businesses that are saying, you know what, I've been doing this for such a long time. I've reached a plateau. I've kind of, become a little stagnant in the business and I want to sell it. Well, another great way to consider another eventual strategy for exiting is franchising, because through franchising now, they can move away from being that business operator, being in the business on a daily basis, to now running the franchisor entity over here, which now will house all the franchising elements of their business model. So they could even sell off that first location or the business that's been very successful in all these years. They could sell that off as their first franchise location. And now what they're doing is they're a franchisor. They're over here focusing on building a franchise network with their brand, coaching, mentoring, inspiring franchisees in their network to be equally successful in the business as they experienced.
Now that sounds like it would be complicated. And if I have say, a plumbing company or let's say a home building company, because that's probably a better franchise opportunity, and I'm building 7, 8, 9, 10 houses a year, I don't need a tremendous amount of business skill to do that. To build a franchise operation, that seems to me like I need a lot of business skill. And where do I get that support and skill if I'm going to build a franchise?
Sure. Well, again, that home builder scenario that you're now talking about, that home builder has been in that business. They know it, they get it, they understand it. And you're right, franchising is a different business. However, that's what we do. So, with accurate franchising, we consult with our clients on how to be a successful franchisor. In fact, with our brands, we've got brands that have been in franchising over 35 years now. So collectively, with all the experience that we have under the United Franchise Group family of brands with our staff, we consult with these clients to train them on how to be a successful franchisor because there is a lot there to know. However, it's not as complicated as you referenced earlier in the question. It's actually something that is very simple for somebody to transition into because they know their own business and they could help their network of franchisees grow because they know their business and we know the franchising side and how to be a successful franchisor.
So, in other words, you kind of hold their hand to go through this process.
We sure do.
And I know this is one of these questions that you just hate to get, but I'll give it to you anyhow. If I decide I want to franchise my business, what's it going to cost me to do so?
Yeah, for us, our standard fee is $69,500. And so let me explain what that is. What we do is we go through a 4-month process of taking a brand and turning them into a franchise business model that they can now offer franchises through. And we first start with a strategic planning and a business planning component, which really allows us to look under the hood of the existing business, understand what is this business? How does it operate? What makes it grow successfully? What are those things that are going to be required in a future franchisee to run this business successfully? We get all that papered. We come out of that with a business plan for the franchisor, the playbook, so to speak, a 1, 2, 3 year growth forecast as a part of that overall business plan. And we also do the modeling now in that phase where, okay, great, we understand the business, but how are we going to model this as a franchise? What are those franchisor expectations going to be, franchisee expectations? What does that initial training look like? What does that ongoing support look like? And then we put the financial modeling to it in that we're going to come up with a franchise fee, a royalty fee on an ongoing basis, and what those market requirements look like for the franchisee to be able to build, grow, and develop this business model. That's phase one. And then we move into doing all the legal documentation. So, unlike a standard law firm or a consulting company just doing the disclosure document, franchise agreement, we're doing a lot more. But here's the key piece: when we do the legal documentation, we're looking at it through the lens of being a franchisor. We're not just saying, okay, this is a way to put it together legally, or this is a way that, from a consulting perspective, you should do it. We're looking at it saying, if this was our own brand, how would we develop it? That's what we do in the legal documentation phase. Out of that, then we move into the operations manual, training manuals. We provide all those, write all those, produce all those manuals that will be needed for the franchisor now to be able to provide to franchisees to show them, here's how you build, grow, develop this business model on an ongoing basis through the lens of an operations manual. And then
So,
finally, we move into the marketing phase, and that's creating all the marketing collateral and everything they need to go out and properly promote, position their brand, etc.
how often do you get through phase one and then go back to a person and say, I can't recommend you to be a franchisor. I'm not sure you'd be great at it.
Well, it has happened, but it happens earlier than that because before we even embark on creating a brand into a franchise, we really go through some diligence ourselves. We do a franchise feasibility questionnaire. We want to make sure there's ultimately alignment of vision and goal with the client and what we see in terms of a long-term, relationship because we don't want to just take business on to take business on. I say avoid of any kind of ego. We don't need to do that. We're in a position today where we don't need to do that. But we want to make sure that the clients we do bring on, again, we see that upside traction and potential. And it's not only seeing that, it's also seeing with the partner, the franchisor client. We need to make sure that they get and understand what franchising is all about, because you've got to be able to build and grow franchises properly. And if you're not wired to do that, and you're more about working in the business and not growing a brand, franchising is not a good vehicle for somebody.
That would be what my suggestion would be. How often do you find that you have to say, this is not for you?
I would say it probably happens 5, 6 times a year, you know,
And how
for
many
us.
out of how many conversations do you have?
We're producing about 75 new clients a year, so it's not a whole lot. But again, when they come to us, they've already considered this. They've already gotten several inquiries from customers saying, hey, you've got a unique brand here, have you considered franchising, or how do I invest in one, or are you opening additional locations? Those are all questions that are indicative of they could be a franchise. So when they come to us, they've thought about this for a good bit in most cases.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. Here's my next question for you. Um, i- if I'm a person considering becoming a franchisee, not a franchisor, what kind of due diligence should I be doing on the franchisor? Because there are some who are really good, and there are some that are just plain scum. So how do you find out which is the good ones, and what do you need to do if you want to become a franchisee to make sure you're not wasting your money?
Perfect. So what you want to do is you don't want to buy a job as a franchisee, right? So when you're looking for a franchise opportunity, you need to look at, okay, what am I driven by? What am I passionate about? What do I really enjoy doing? And try to align those things with a franchise that's out there that could bring a lot of that to the table. That's first and foremost, because again, if you're not happy and passionate and excited about what the brand is, what the service is, and so forth, you're buying a job. And that's not what franchising is all about. You're able to really build and grow a successful business in franchising, and franchising has been an incredible wealth creator if you do it the right way. So I would say it starts with that. Second is, let's say you find something that aligns well with your background and your passion and skill sets. Then what you want to do is you really want to spend time with that franchisor. Good franchisors out there offer discovery days where you could go and spend time with that franchisor at their home office. We do it all the time, where you get to learn about the brand at the ground level. You get to meet the team, see the company culture. Again, get a sense for, is there alignment of vision and goal here? So that's paramount when you're looking at a franchise opportunity. And then beyond that, it's about talking to franchisees, getting a sense from the franchisees in that brand. Hey, how has this been for you? Has this been a good business model for you? Are you happy? Would you do it again? Those are all good questions when you're talking to franchisees in the network. So, those are the things that I would suggest to a potential franchisee when considering any franchise brand.
So would you ask the franchisor to give you a reference to one of their franchisees that didn't make it?
Sure. And you could also find that as a potential franchisee in the disclosure document. All franchisors are legally required to disclose their franchisees in their network and any that were terminated for whatever reason. So, yes, I mean, a smart, savvy prospect will do that anyway. But yeah, some of them will even ask ourselves as an organization, hey, can you share a story of somebody that did not make it? Why didn't they make it? So that does happen.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it happened. I mean, it happened. I assume that almost every franchisor has had franchises that didn't work out. Um,
You bet.
so, so when I'm about to become a franchisee and I'm about to, and again, let's say I'm an operating company and I've been operating independently for 15 years and I see a franchise pop up that looks like, gee, this might be a good idea for me. It might make my business better. It might make it more organized, whatever reason they decide to do that. What is the change in how you operate when you go from being an independent to a franchisee?
It happens a good bit, and we do a lot of what's called conversions with our different brands. And just to your point, a company that's been out there, they've been operating for 10, 15 years. Again, in a lot of cases, that type of person gets to the point where they're saying, you know what, this has been a fun ride, but I can't really break through this ceiling. There's a threshold here in which we've experienced. Maybe it's time for us to consider either taking on different services or maybe looking at a brand that's out there that we can convert our business to and grow further. So, as an example, we have a brand called Signorama, and there's existing sign operations out there. And we do a good number of conversions on a yearly basis because that operator that's been in business for 10 or 15 years reaches that ceiling and they say, you know what, maybe it's time for us to join a network to be able to benefit from best practices, enhanced margins through the purchases of products. Also, too, I go back to that exit strategy piece because if you're part of a franchise network versus being on your own as an independent, when you go to sell your business someday, it's going to be far more attractive if you're part of a global network, like we have in many cases with our brands. So it becomes a nice exit strategy as well. Now, back to your question specifically, though, on you kind of get used to what you're used to as an independent business owner in your model. So, yes, when you move over to a franchise model, again, you want to go through that same type of diligence in that, yes, we're both in the sign industry in this scenario that we're talking about. But in terms of now converting my brand over to a brand like Signorama, that meeting with the team, understanding the vision of the brand, what is the long term plan? What does the future potentially look like in this kind of scenario? That's definitely very important. So, the same kind of due diligence process and vetting out goes on even with the conversion.
So that would mean that if I, well, one of the things that I would be concerned about if I was a franchisor bringing an independent into my franchise is I'm bringing a person in who has been used to doing it their way for 8 zillion years. And this is true with any acquisition, by the way. You're joining a group, and the reason you're joining the group is because they have systems and processes that are proven that will get you past where you are. It would seem to me, and this seems to be why a lot of acquisitions don't work especially well for small businesses, is that small business owners, as a rule, aren't very good at following other people's rules. Uh, is that something you run across a fair amount with when you're converting somebody to a franchise?
It does happen. But again, it's enormously important on the front end when you're considering both as the franchisor converting that independent and that independent converting over to the franchise model that you flush a lot of this out because you need to understand what the vision is of the brand. And the franchisor needs to be able to clearly articulate here's what we're looking for. This is the ideal franchise owner for us in a conversion scenario. Yes, you've got a lot of great things that you've done in your business to build and grow your business, and that's phenomenal. And there's a lot of that too that particular conversion operation will be able to continue to do because we recognize that we're not a company that's going to say it's our way or the highway. However, there are aspects of our business model that we're going to be wanting that new franchisee in the conversion scenario to comply with because it's the brand, right? And we've got systems, processes, procedures in place. But there's some flexibility in there too because we want to recognize what that entrepreneur, that business owner has accomplished because that's what's gotten them from where they were to where they are today. And we recognize that.
Cool. So, when you build a franchise out or a franchisee wants to join a firm, how many employees would it make sense? I mean, where do you find they typically get stuck? And then they come to you guys and they say, I'm a little bit stuck. Your franchise might be able to help me. I mean, I assume it's not 3 or 4 employees. I would expect it to be more than that. But do you have a number that typically where you see people show up at your door?
Is this on the franchise development side now that we're talking about where you've got a company and they're a
No,
little
I'm
bit
talking about
stuck and
somebody who's an independent and is considering becoming a franchisee of one of,
oh I see.
of a brand.
Um, in my observations, it's been a company that's been in business for on average 5 years. They've got, 4 employees, maybe a little bit more than that. And they're looking to now convert over to another business model because they see the benefit. They see all those benefits between mass purchasing power, brand awareness, long-term exit strategy. So on average, that's what I'm seeing in my division of the company with those conversions that we deal with.
And with blue collar franchisees, what's the range of fees they would be paying? Not the McDonald's where it's, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but what's the range of fees? Say let's, for example, say a janitorial company, and I've got 6 people working for me and I want to become a franchisee of somebody. What would the franchise fee likely look like?
So, in that case, if it were to be a conversion, there's typically on the franchisor side a conversion pricing model that's in place, an incentive for that existing business to convert over to the franchise business model now. So, as an example, we have brands that are in neighborhoods of around $50,000 for the franchise fee, the licensing fee. But those same brands have a conversion incentive in place for around $29,000 to give a little bit of a reduction on the franchise fee. It's really considered a conversion franchise fee, so it's a reduced amount. But in the spectrum of franchise fees, in my division of the company with Accurate Franchising, we run it everywhere from on the low end, 17,500 to on the high end about $80,000 in terms of a franchise fee spectrum.
So for a company for 5 or 6 people, um, you know, 40,000 is affordable, but they often would have to finance it. Do you guys help with the financing also?
We don't help with the financing on the franchise fee, but what's in addition to a franchise fee in a lot of cases, whether it's a mobile franchise, a brick and mortar franchise, or even to some extent some of the technology franchises that you could operate out of like a co-work space, you've got the franchise fee as one component of that sale, and then you've got a equipment supplies package, which we refer to as a Schedule A in our world. But in that case, yes, there is financing options for those types of purchases if there's equipment, supplies, furniture involved.
Cool. Hey, Tipton, unfortunately, we are out of time. And I'm going to bet that people listening or watching to this, or watching this, not to this, watching this, would love to contact you about exploring what a franchise might look for them. So, how would they find you?
Great, thank you. And it was time well spent. I appreciate it. But certainly, they could find us at accuratefranchising.com. So we have a division of United Franchise Group, which is our parent organization. Accurate Franchising Inc. is a part of the United Franchise Group family of brands. So they can either visit our website at unitedfranchisegroup.com or they could visit us at accuratefranchising.com.
And if they wanted to find you, how would they do that?
Sure. My name is Tipton Schonkweiler, and I am on LinkedIn, and I also am accessible from our website, but I'm happy to tell you my email as well. It's Tipton, TIPTONS, at accuratefranchising.com.
Cool. And I've got 2 things I'd like you to do, and you've heard me say the first one 8 zillion times, or actually 370 times or so. And that's wherever you're listening to this podcast, please give us an honest rating and review. And while you're at it, subscribe every Monday morning at 6 o'clock, or the last Monday we missed it. We have a new episode that comes out, and we put it on the website and LinkedIn, all sorts of fun places. You can find us on Spotify, you can find us on Apple. Wherever you get your podcasts, we're probably there. And the second thing is I've been writing a newsletter for 40 years. I've been doing it electronically every Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock for the last 18 years. That's a lot of newsletters. At any rate, it's easy to get. You go to www.sustainablebusiness.co/newsletter. Give me your first name and your email address, and you're on the list. And that's, again, www.sustainablebusiness.co/newsletter. This is Josh Patrick. We're with Tipton Schonkweiler. You're at Cracking the Cashflow Code. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see you back here really soon.